Good evening and welcome to the June 5th meeting of the Board of Supervisors. We're going to begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. We'll begin with Supervisor McCartney, who is not going to be able to join us this evening. Supervisor Grenier?
Here.
Supervisor Ross?
Here.
Supervisor Blundy?
Here.
Okay, excellent. We're going to begin with community announcements. If you'd like to register for the pool, and you definitely want to do that, there's a few open spots. Please visit www.lmt.org. Now, if you have some free time on the weekends and would like to volunteer your time, it sounds like a good idea, you can join the Friends of 5 Mile Woods Cleanup Days. They're held the second Saturday of the month at 5 Mile Woods, starting at 8:30 a.m. Please come in comfortable clothes that you don't mind getting dirty, and bring along your work gloves and water to stay hydrated. Projects for the day will include litter cleanup, trail lining, and pruning, as well as boardwalk repairs. If you have any questions, you can email Monica Tierney, she's here if you just want to wave, at monicat@lmt.org. So if you're thinking about, hey, I'd like to do something that would make a difference in the community and feel good doing it, why not volunteer for the Friends of 5 Mile Woods? And the Board of Supervisors recognizes and proclaims the month of June as Pride Month in Lower Makefield Township and encourages the community to recognize and celebrate the contributions of the LGBTQ+ community to Lower Makefield Township. And as a reminder, it is the 55th anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising, and it's important to remember how far we've come and that more can be done. At this time, we'll move on to Agenda Item 5, public comment on non-agenda items. So if you have something that's not currently on the agenda, you're welcome to come up. State your name and whether you're a resident of Lower Makefield Township.
Zachary Rubin, 1661 Covington Road. I've only lived here 33 years. I rise for 2 points. Number one, a couple months ago, I brought in front of this board a problem that I saw in the Edgewood Historical District. That is, there was an insurance agency that was flying flags that I believe was a violation of the restrictions in the district. Those flags are no longer there. So I'd like to either commend this board or the township manager who's responsible for doing that. So it's a hearty thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, sir.
Okay. My second point is, some of us are old enough to remember what happened with the Matrix development in this development eons ago. At the time, there was a parcel of land that was owned by the Bellmead Company, which is a subsidiary of Chubb Insurance Company. They sold the land to Matrix, and Matrix wanted to put a 300,000 square foot big box retail there. But also on that land was the remnants and the foundation of a historical structure from this township, the Octagon School. It's an 8-sided school. It was there from the 19th century, and the foundations were there. Matrix said, we're going to build the replica of that school as part of the development of this big box. And what happened was, and the Octagon schools, there's one that's been reconstructed on 232 by Swamp Road, if you want to see what it looks like. Well, when they surveyed the land, it seems that Bellman did not own that parcel of land where the school was on. It was privately held. So when they built the development, which was called the Octagon Development, which were they named it after the school, and Matrix was going to rebuild it, they found out that they didn't own it, and Matrix tried to buy that little parcel of land. It's basically where Oxford Valley Road meets Big Oak Road there. Now, subsequently, they Matrix sold the land to Toll Brothers because there was a great grassroots organization called Residents Against Matrix that fought it tooth and nail and prevailed basically in the courts. Therefore, but that parcel of land is up for sale now. So my question is, what is this township doing to try to preserve that historic heritage that we have and possibly reconfigure that school? Is there any movement to try to preserve that piece of our history?
If I can, the Historical Commission reviewed this, I believe, last year. The challenge is, obviously, we don't own the property. The property's been owned by a family since the 50s.
Well, I think they go back to the 18th century, the people who own it, but that's
Well,
another
the
story.
current, yeah. My understanding is that the price that they put it out there for is so far above market value that the fact that it still remains open and that there's not enough, that there's nothing you can build there, has made it in a circumstance where they're not likely to find a buyer because their pricing is way off and they don't have the right or the ability to build anything.
Was
So-
there any movement to have them to donate that to the township?
in
Or-
this-
or-
Well,
I
but
know that the Historic
Yeah,
Commission
they've-
previously has had a number of conversations and has
Yeah.
been unable to get the family to cooperate in a way that makes sense.
yeah, and the family actually, and I don't want to out the owner of the property, but they actually haven't been good stewards of the Octagonal Schoolhouse, the remnants of it, and they haven't been open to dialogue about that.
Okay, well, I hope in the future you do pursue it and keep that on the burner, because it's a very important part of our history. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Are there any members of the audience? And I'm not seeing any steady light, so it looks like we have no one on the line. With that, we'll move on to agenda item 6. These are the consent agenda items. So at this time, I'd ask supervisors if they're okay with any of the items or all of the items on the consent agenda for approval. If there's any one item or two items that you'd like to remove and discuss separately, now would be a time that you could ask for that if you'd like. And I'll give you a moment here. Not seeing anybody. Everybody good with that? I'd accept a motion to accept the consent agenda items.
So moved.
Second?
Okay. And not hearing any discussion or seeing any hands, I'll call the question on the consent agenda items. All those in favor of the consent agenda items as listed on the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That would be 4-0. And moving on to number 7, community development.
There are no items this evening under community development.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 8, engineers report.
Thank you, Chairman Lewis. The engineers' report for this evening has a few updates. There's some ongoing work with projects in the township we wanted to provide updates and highlight for this evening. And also, it's really the bulk of grant applications this time of year, and there's a few that follow in our section here that are really some good opportunities that the township is pursuing. So we can get into those a little more in detail, but just to provide updates this evening of ongoing work, the township's MS4 annual program with the annual report period ending in the month of June. The outfall inspections that would be included as well in that report, they're in progress to finish and include that for the DEP. So if you see our team out there, it's usually one person that's taking a look at those outfalls, making sure there's not any kind of odd color discharge coming out of the pipes into the streams, taking a look at the conditions of them. And that's something that's part of the report that goes to the DEP every year. Another part of that MS4 program is the pollutant reduction plan, and really a game plan of how to identify and get some of the projects completed going forward. Those are some of the, I would say most of the grant opportunities that were at the end of May here. We met with the township staff on the 20th of May to really kind of put together a game plan with some of these grant opportunities. And then also with the finance staff to take a look kind of going forward, the best way to map out how to accomplish the reduction goals that are part of the permitted plan that was approved in 2022 by the DEP. So that permit plan goes until 2027. So really taking a look at, budget, grant opportunities, and how to plan those out over the next couple of years the most effective way. The Highland Drive Drainage Project update for that, we did receive the permit fees for the GP5s. So just a reminder, that's the part of the permit package that presents relocation of underground utilities to the DEP that's in a stream, which is the water line of PA American Water and also Pico Gas. Those were packaged up with the township permits that went in for the replacement of the culvert and also additional stream bank work, not only right around that culvert on Highland, but also moving downstream towards the one that's under Taylorsville, a couple hundred feet away. With those checks received, the permit package did get submitted to DEP on May 30th, which we're pleased to say now is with them, with the pre-application meetings that we did with them. We're hoping that it is their minimal turnaround time, which is typically about 45 days. That would look to have us receive back any kind of comments they may have by like the second week of July. July 13th is where that 45-day mark hits. So we'll plan to follow up with them, just kind of remind them of that timeline, and hopefully we'll see something within that time period they let us know in the pre-app meeting. Concurrently with that, the plans go to the Bucks County Conservation District. That is looking to be submitted this upcoming week. Their turnaround time is usually much less than the DEP review, so we'll look to have any comments from them back as well. And as we've stated in meetings in the past, the time while we're waiting for that feedback from the agencies will be looked to provide just the latest and greatest plans to the residents, to the neighborhood there. Any final feedback from the neighborhood, we'll look to hear that, maybe incorporate some of that with the final bid package plans that would go out to bid. And we'll have comments from the DEP as well. So that last push would be just to tweak and finalize those plans, which we'll look to do as soon as that permitting is received. That would be the push to get that bid advertisement scheduled, and we'll look to have it out to bid later this summer. The update for the road program, they are looking to have the notice to proceed date as June 17th, which will be the Monday following the end of the school year. There's ramp work associated with that project, so we didn't want to disturb any of the bus stops and end of school year movement around the township with the school buses and everything else. So they'll look to start either on that Monday or that week, and we'll provide updates of kind of which roads and the order of their sequence that folks can expect for their work to be done this summer. An update for the Woodside Road Bike Path Project. The utility phase, if you will, of what we're in at the moment. PECO has completed the tree trimming that goes along with the movement of their electric lines. That just completed this past week. The 4th was their final day of moving those final elements. After that, the sequence that takes place is that the other utilities that were on the old poles move to the new ones. So that includes Verizon, Comcast, and there's one other telecom company that has some stuff on some of the poles. When they move their equipment to the new poles, PECO comes and takes the old ones out of the ground. They wait until that happens, and they just take the pole itself, so there's nothing else on there. That is something we're continuing to push with those other utility companies. It's expected that would probably take a couple weeks here, June probably into July, so that PECO can remove their old poles. We did meet and talk with the contractor for the project. They are ready to remobilize to address those sections that still need to be completed for the trail within about a 2-week time frame once the old poles are out of there. So as it's along the timeline we've been talking about, late summer for coming back out and hopefully to address that. There is a grant, one of the ones we have before the board tonight as a resolution That is a DCD Greenways opportunity that can really assist with some of those additional finalizing elements that were not in the contract originally when the project went out and was constructed up to this point. So we can talk a little bit about that some more with that grant resolution. Just a few other updates for the board and for the public. Since the last meeting, the wetland and gravel bar maps and reports were provided for the township at the end of May on the 21st. What that is the areas to each side of Taylorsville Road. We had done wetland delineation, gravel bar maps. With the meetings that we had with DEP, they were looking at really having a baseline identification of all those features in those areas. Originally, there was the thought of if there was permitting that would be pursued immediately, that information would be part of that. That turned out not to be one of the things that was moved along. It was more just clearing and improving those areas by the Public Works Department. But if they're in the future, it's identified that there is some permitting work that we want to do. These maps and kind of just the existing layout of these wetland limits and gravel bar areas would be part of what we would have to submit for that permitting work. So right now, it's a tool, it's a reference for the township and something that we'll have as a good mapping of those areas for any work that would come in the future. A few sites in development, just as an update for information. The Fieldstone Harris development had the initial review letters issued in May. They're awaiting a resubmission, and they would be reviewed again, and I'm sure go back before the Planning Commission. Similarly, with the Wright subdivision, that initial review was issued at the end of April. They have a few other reviews that come from all kinds of folks that take a look at those big land developments. So that's also awaiting resubmission, and we'll look to see how they can address the comments that were issued to them. Finally, some of the land developments in construction. The Regency at Yardley, we had a walkthrough for tree assessments, which was something identified and, for lack of a better term, promised to the folks that already live there to just identify trees that the developer would replace as part of their punch list that they're working through this summer. That was done on the 30th and 31st of May, and we'll issue that to the developer so they have a list of locations of all the trees that need to be replaced. That was a walkthrough we did with the developer team and also the HOA that represents the residents there. And just to touch upon another grant before the resolutions we have tonight, the grant that was issued a while back, the Woodside Road Trail Grant, the MTF grant, we had worked to have reimbursement submitted to the agency. They did acknowledge yesterday on June 4th that the reimbursement check was cut for the township and should be here by early next week. The amount of that reimbursement is $317,700. And then the remaining grant amount would be requested for reimbursement once the project's completed, and they wait till completion to issue the rest of that. But that's a bulk of what that grant amount was for the township. So with that, happy to answer questions on the report for this month, and then the items that are listed here to come up or resolutions for some of the grant opportunities that we are looking to pursue for the township.
Can I go first?
Go for it.
Do we expect we'll have a comprehensive revised project plan for all the work being done in the Mapleville area? I know we had a plan. We've been executing toward the plan. It needs to be updated because we've hit milestones, and we need to make sure we've covered everything so that those who want to know that we've hit everything we said we would do and get a sense of where we were timeline, budget-wise, scope-wise. Mm-hmm. Is that anticipated to be coming soon?
It is, yes. Thanks for that reminder. That is the other big piece that we wanted to revisit and update for everyone after the permitting went in, because of that permit timeline that each agency has. That was the timing we would look at to now know really that milestone of the permitting going in and then the remaining schedule for the summer here coming up. So that's something in addition to meeting with residents with the Highland Drive plans that were submitted. We'll look to update that with the goal of having that updated before the next meeting that we have for the township here.
Excellent. Supervisor Grenier?
That was a great segue.
Did you?
Thank you.
Yeah.
You mind?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Couple follow-up, all related to that plan, pieces of the Maple Vale plan or that watershed plan. On the Highland Drive improvements, you mentioned that we got the permit fees checked, the permit fees for the GP5s.
Yes.
Those were, and that was submitted. My understanding is that, did the township cover all those permit fees, or did the individual utility owners cover the fees that go along with their utilities?
So as a municipality, we're waived for the fees for the work that the township has in the package. The utilities, the GP5s, it's a $250 fee for
Sure.
each of those utilities. PA American Water provided that check from them that we included with the package. Pico Gas, unfortunately, their communication with us said that the town pays that and they do the work for moving the gas lines. So that $250 was provided with the package as a check from the township, amount, and then Pico Gas is the GP5.
Hold that thought for
Sure.
a second. That just doesn't seem right. Is there anyone at Pico that we
Oh,
could
there
reach
is someone
out?
at Pico, yeah. And he knows I have his cell phone number, so that person knows.
I mean, good on a PA Water for doing,
Yeah.
for being a good neighbor, but I think,
I don't want to have to tell everybody.
Yeah.
When they have an outage, who to call. Sorry, yeah. So-
Yeah, I mean, we did all the meetings leading up to the permit package, not to defend Pico Gas in this
Yeah.
situation, but it was reviewed that GP5s were, submitted by them. When it came time to kind of remind them that we need the checks for those pieces, that's when they, I guess, told us that it was needed to be covered, and they wouldn't be cutting a check for that $250.
I'm curious from a legal perspective if that's something that, it's $250, so it's not a huge number, but the principle of it is we're covering a permit fee for them. It's their permit. Technically, they are the holder, they are the permittee on there. It's related to one of our projects, but it just doesn't.
Yeah, we can follow up and have a conversation on that issue.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know that we're going to reach resolution, obviously, right now on that. So, but happy to follow up and have a conversation to see if there's anything that can be done on that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It just gets under my, I file these permits all the time. It gets under my skin when I hear that.
Yep.
The other one you mentioned, the wetland delineation report that you just filed, and that's for the gravel bars in the area of Taylorsville and Prospect Farm, right?
Correct, yeah, both sides of Taylorsville Road there.
Yeah.
The stream coming
So
across.
previously, there was discussion about removing the gravel bars to provide for some more volume. That would require GP3, hence the delineation as part of the GP3 application package to the Pennsylvania DEP. Tonight, you're saying that there was a decision made to not follow through with that approach. I'm wondering when that happened and why that happened.
It was after we had the pre-application meetings with DEP and then discussion with staff. It was identified that if it was a clear removal of all the gravel bar locations in that stretch, it could have kind of a counter effect of what we were trying to accomplish there, where basically, and this was discussions that we had with staff, if you kind of clear the route there, you would basically kind of invite additional velocity, coming through there. So at the end of the day, it was concluded that removing all that gravel bar locations was perhaps not the best approach during this time. The improvements to the clearing and some of the debris removal was definitely something that was looked at as effective, but to kind of go into a GP3 where you want to really clear out the stream with some of those gravel bar locations as well, that's where it kind of, at least for now, was decided to
And I think
stop
in part,
before that.
I mean,
Yep.
you can speak to the significance of the gravel bar buildup. I mean,
There wasn't
I
much.
want to make sure that it's understood that there was not a significant buildup of sediment and gravel in that stream.
That's true, yeah. It wasn't locations that you might have an issue with, almost like damming of the stream. It was more minor areas that had buildup, but at this time, clearing that out, we didn't think would actually be a benefit to
So-
the stormwater controls.
I'll say it different. So the cost benefit of clearing a gravel bar just wasn't there. And there may be, it's maybe providing a little more volume capacity, but the flip side of that is that the rate is much greater, so that could actually have a negative effect on the area. So you're going to balance the two.
Yeah, I
when
think
you're talking about
it was
water.
something that land studies actually raised some concern
Yeah,
about.
two points, yeah, was land studies' concern is that when they walked it, they didn't see anything significant just through a walk capacity, that the minor stone that you saw there, or the minor buildup that you saw is actually, if you would have removed it, then you would have started undercut effect, the geomorphic type stone that's there, and then you would have had a gravel bar further downstream. So you're just going to chase it now until a stream management plan is put in place, or a rebuild or reconstruction of the stream. So from their perspective, they wouldn't recommend touching anything. Isaac's team did map everything, and from what Isaac's team mapped, there was very insignificant amounts of quote-unquote gravel bars in DEP's mind that's allowed to be removed. Again, DEP is 6 inches above normal stream flow. Anything is considered stream bed, so you can't even touch that. So they only look at material that's greater than 6 inches. And there was very little on the maps that Isaac's team's done that would be of benefit. There was none that would be beneficial to remove at this
And
time.
not for nothing, the benthic ecology that occurs in those gravel bars is actually quite beneficial to the streams and at some point when it comes to water quality. So just keeping an eye on it as we go forward.
And to
Yeah.
Isaac's point, that's why DEP said map it, baseline it, so we know if we want to look at it next year, we know what's moving down there, and we can
All right.
address accordingly.
So we can, when we talk about the plan that Supervisor Lewis mentioned, we can kind of keep, that's not necessarily in the plan per se as the next step, but it's adjacent to the plan is something to keep an eye on.
It's a tool, it's a planning tool that we have, yes.
Yeah, and what was lacking before this was done, obviously, was just kind of a clear understanding of where everything stands out in those parts of the streams there. And to your point, not only was it a cost benefit, it's more so like a stormwater benefit, right? Like to your point,
Yeah,
the
it's
rate
just-
control
yeah.
and things that actually helps with the way the water moves down that area.
Now, the other part of this, the master plan, the grand plan here, is the sidewalk on Taylorsville. I didn't hear you mention that tonight, so where, can you give us an update on that one?
Absolutely. So I know that there's opportunities from a couple different fronts taking a look at that stretch. It is a PennDOT roadway. DVRPC, has a look at that stretch as well. I didn't mention it with the ongoing grants, but in the grant section at the end of the report, it does have identified an opportunity that's a zero match for the township for DCD MTF due at the end of July. And that really hits on a lot of what that project is looking to do. Sidewalk, connectivity, also improvements, obviously with the stormwater front, which is almost the priority with that, any curbing or stormwater infrastructure. So that is some working with staff. We're looking to at least put that initial push together, hopefully with a chance to take advantage of an opportunity like the one that's available at the end of July.
So yeah, it's June 5th today. If it's the last one that's due July 31st, right?
Correct.
So we have effectively a month and a half to get in there, and that's a high priority one. So do we have, maybe part of the plan that you're talking about, do we have like a bullet list items we need to get done in order to meet that grant deadline?
Well, to have a grant that we would really be, confident in going in at the end of July, first that would be survey work, then preliminary design layout. We did a walkthrough to identify kind of the items that would be part of that project, right? Like I mentioned, the sidewalk, the curbing, stormwater pipes, inlets where it's possibly going to be discharging. But after the survey, we can kind of just fine tune that, get that prepared, and we're looking to meet with Township again to take those next steps, perhaps within the next week or so here, and then push towards the next month or so.
since it may take, I don't know how long it'll take to procure survey. Supervisor Ross has done a fair amount of work, obviously, in the borough, doing something similar, so there's stuff to piggyback, and I believe your firm actually did a lot of that work too, so there's stuff to piggyback there. From a survey perspective, I don't know if this is something we could take advantage of LiDAR from PASTA, if that's good enough, rather
That would
than
be
having to
helpful.
go get a survey company.
There is a large component of what would be part of this project that would be right-of-way meets and bounds. So LiDAR doesn't quite, get that confirmed. So we want to make sure, the buffer, sidewalk, and then the folks that live along that stretch and the properties, that we have that fully, nailed down so we can really get an idea if there's any kind of outside of laying the sidewalk and curbing, any kind of right-of-way coordination that would need to be done.
Okay. Yeah, that's obviously, I think some of us, that's a top priority for us, so. And then the last piece, I'm sure Supervisor Ross looks like he wants to ask something. Part of the plan, there's a federal grant application, Mr. Kratzer, that was filed on our behalf. What was through the congressman's office that he was?
Yeah, it's called Community Projects Funding. It's somewhat of a general or generic name. Again, the materials have been submitted. It was an $8 million request that was submitted by the congressman's office. We have had follow-up by FEMA House Appropriation Committee staff. Again, just sort of going through the basic scope of the project. All of that seemed favorable in terms of their response. So again, I know the congressman continues to support this, and we continue to work cooperatively with his staff to try to push this forward. So I think at this point, we've done what we can do to position ourselves, and the folks in Maple Vale were very helpful as well. I know there was a letter of support that was given. So again, Senator was supportive, or State Senator was supportive, or House member was supportive. So I think it's something that folks are prioritizing. So I think we're well positioned. We'll just have to wait to see what happens.
Is there a sort of deadline when we'll know by or anything like that?
I mean, again, it all relates to passage of a federal budget and so forth. So it's difficult. It's difficult to say at this point. But again, we're periodically speaking with Kyle, and he's providing us updates on that. But we have had interface with again, FEMA House Appropriations Committee staff that's doing the review on behalf of the committee at this point. So we're where we need to be. And then I think just not necessarily building on Isaac's report, but part of the sort of the grand plan, if you will, so to speak. I don't know if you want to provide some update on our upcoming meeting with land studies to look at.
Yeah, so land studies completed, I guess I'll call it their phase one project, which was the soil boring and things like that along the parcels north and south of Maple Vale. So that was finalized, and did you forward that report off, Dave? I'm not sure if you forwarded that report off, but if not, we'll forward that report off to the board. So their next step that they would recommend looking at is the stream upstream of Lower Hilltop in the basin there. So their next recommendation, and we're meeting with them in the next few days here, is to come up with a plan to do an H&H of that basin for Makefield Chase, and see if we can relocate the stream into the basin and almost do a holding of the stream in that basin, utilize that basin to hold the stream back a little bit and provide some more capacity of the stream flow for storm surge that occurred. And with that would be some of the stream bank reconstruction along the two homes there, just upstream of Lower Hilltop. So
7 Lower Hilltop, is that where the stream does the 90?
yeah, the 90,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. Their initial plan, and it's always part of their project that they thought could happen, is get rid of that 90, put the stream into the basin, and almost make a wetland type situation for capacity storage, and then slowly discharge the stream out into between the properties of Lower Hilltop there. So there is a proposal. We have a discussion with them to see what their steps are, but they need to basically do a large H&H of that basin, because I know, talking with Jim, and they were discussing with Jim, we don't have any of the capacity calculations of that basin anymore, or we couldn't find them. So they need to almost look at that drainage for that basin and see what's possible to do there. So that would be the next step that they would recommend that we can move forward on a design to help with the stream flow.
Interesting. So putting that in the plan?
Absolutely.
All right. That's all I have, thank you.
Any other supervisor? Okay. Move on to agenda item 8B.
8B this evening, we have the full proposal really mapped out by phases of the scope for the Highland Drive Drainage Improvement Project. This is a project that obviously the board had voted to move ahead, kind of full steam ahead a few months back. The parts that were still kind of up in the air at that time were coordination of all the permitting that went in, just the other day here, was items to meet with the public and get feedback of parts of the design that were going in, which are, these factors have led to why the proposal is before the board tonight as compared to before a project. Typically, we lay out all the different elements from the get-go. So the proposal this evening really has all the completed work to date, as well as just an outline of what's left. If you do look at the proposal included, as mentioned, the permitting has gone in. That permitting phase, which is identified as phase 3 of the proposal, after the initial field and plan and spec work. That permitting number 3 is basically 3 and 4 remain there. Any comments we get back from the agencies, looking to finalize that for bidding, and then phase 4 is bidding. Phase 5 is construction management inspection. So to date, of the total not to exceed amount, which is listed in the agenda there, $177,975. To date, we have $129,694 that's been completed. So the remaining scope for that last push of permitting and the bidding and construction phase is $48,011. But obviously, it outlines the breakdown of each of the tasks that we've had along the way. So if there's any questions, happy to answer. But that full proposal is before the board this evening.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Administrative question, I think. I think this is more for township manager. The proposal is sort of a combination of already completed work plus new work.
Needed work, yes, yeah.
Which is a little different.
Than typical, yes, as Isaac
Can you
knows.
explain how we got to where we are with this one?
Well, again, some of it was the direction that was provided by the Board of Supervisors
Yeah.
in terms of prioritizing this project and providing that direction to RVE. So again, in terms of the work that's been done to date, it's all that has been done in order to prepare us to make the agency submissions that Isaac has just communicated. And then based on their understandings and interface with the utilities and those agencies, I guess you're outlining what you believe the necessary work is to complete the remainder of the project from its current point to conclusion through construction observation, and so forth, correct?
Correct.
So again, very obviously different, that we sort of advance things before having
Yeah.
this full understanding, but
So is there a need, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what you put in the first phases or tasks, whatever we're calling them, is there a need to put those items in a proposal if they've already been completed? Or is this, in my world, if I do that, it'd be because it's a change order that was promised but not received yet, I guess. So I'm curious as to why we're doing that here, if that muddies the waters at all. No pun
Well,
intended.
I'd be happy to explain that all the capital projects for the township that we do, as they come out of, whether it's direction from the board or general engineering type of discussion of projects, we always try to make sure we have that full proposal for not to exceed amount. Obviously, the coordination we do with staff to look at the status of projects as well as budget planning and how that folds into the construction costs that are planned for different projects. That's basically the reason why we want to make sure to include those tasks that have been completed along the way too. It has the full project beginning to end listed out and described for not only the board, but for staff and for planning purposes.
Relative to,
So if I just from context standpoint, of the scope that's before them, Isaac, the 177,975, the total not to exceed amount, again, bringing it from sort of beginning to end, of that amount, to date is, I believe the current spend is already close to $100,000. Is that not correct?
120 something, I think.
120.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Job to date, basically up until just a few days, the end of May here, for all that permitting going in, we have had 129,964. So the last few tasks remain, obviously, and that would be $48,011 if you divided it exactly where we are now.
Yeah. I'm just, from my perspective, it's really just about accounting and making sure that we know what's been done to date versus what's still to come, so that we can track that well. Couple quick questions. Since it's not to exceed, what, in the event that we, DEP gives a lot of comments, or the Conservation District gives a lot of comments, and I'm not saying they will, if they say your design's awful, we need to go back to the drawing board, and then we got to go redo all this stuff.
They would never say something like that.
Yes, never. What recourse does the township have in this case if we got to go back to the drawing board on something? That's something I think is lacking in these proposals sometimes, is that we don't have assumptions that protect the township quite as much.
Well, the reason that we have these pre-application meetings, which we've done on this project as well, is to try to not have any surprises when these permits go into these agencies that provide comments and ultimately approval for the work to be done. So we do have confidence that we were including and addressing a lot of the things they've already highlighted when we had that meeting with them before they see the package arrive on their desk. In the proposal here under permitting, we include 2 submissions to each of these agencies, which is that initial one, and then also to resubmit with any comments. There's always a couple that they have. If it, for some reason, and there are times that I've experienced with some of the agencies like DEP, PennDOT, where they just may change reviewers, and then the second one comes in and they kind of give you another batch of new comments. If it does have a, hopefully not, but if it does go down that path, we would communicate that with the township and say, hey, they're kind of still providing more and more comments. We may have to, put another resubmission together for them, and that's something we would discuss and bring for any changes beyond those 2 submissions that are in the proposal here.
Okay.
Any other, with that, call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Did you want to see if there was public comment?
Oh, well, no light, no one's now that we have the light, I don't have to, that's okay. And it's flashing when the mic is not working, but solid when they're there.
He hasn't flashed it yet, so
Yeah.
I'm proud of myself. Almost.
With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the minutes reflect it was
Opposed.
4-0. Oh, sorry, pardon me.
Opposed.
3-1, with Supervisor Blundy being opposed. Agenda item 8C.
8C and then also D&E are DCD grants that were due at the end of May. We, as I mentioned, met with staff, at least on the stormwater ones, which are D&E, about some of the MS4 pollutant reduction plan projects that we could hopefully complete with the PRP that has planned out. But going deeper into item C here, this is the DCD Greenways grant application, and it is for the Woodside Road bike path repaving. So just to remind the board, we had submitted a grant for the Taylorsville Woodside Trail crossing. That was a a DVRPC Trails Grant, which went in the beginning of May, on May 3rd, requesting $200,000 of grant funding to assist with that piece of the project, to connect the trails from Woodside to the Joint Toll Bridge Commission Trail on the other side of the intersection. The grant application for DCD Greenways focuses on the items that remain to complete the Woodside Road Trail coming down along Woodside down to that intersection. To identify what these items are and why it's kind of an additional grant request being pursued here is that this project, as everyone is familiar, had different kind of turns in the road along the way. Coming out of COVID, when the project was looking to get bid out and constructed, the coordination with the utilities was extremely challenging. I give them complete credit now to being out there and moving the poles and everything. But at that time, it was the direction to not wait for the utilities to put the trail in around the poles, as we know. So there's portions of the trail that are constructed that need to be straightened out, right? That is work that the contractors constructed the trail, and going back to construct those pieces there's a cost associated with that. As well, the long stretch coming down the hill as you go towards Taylorsville, it was directed not to have to do any kind of right-of-way takes in the area there. That limited the trail to being in a closer proximity with the edge of curb roadway there. End of story of that was the meetings held about that item is that it was desired really to put some fencing along where that buffer is less than the recommended amount by AASHTO and some of the roadside trail agencies. So that fence has costs related with it as well, obviously. And then lastly, with the PICO work, the tree trimming is not a cost that PICO covers themselves. They move their poles, they move their wires, they take their old poles once everybody else is off of them, but they do not cover the cost of the tree trimming in this instance. So that is something we wanted to look to get funding assistance on rather than having it a cost solely for the township. One more thing, lastly, the slope along the one basin, rearmoring that to make sure there's not erosion issues with the way that the trail was placed with waiting for the poles to get moved. That's another item included. So the cost estimate for those items with this grant opportunity we thought was a great way to hopefully get funding assistance for those costs that remain to complete the trail project. With that, there's a 15% match of the grant funding. We're requesting funding pretty much for the complete estimate of what those costs may be, and instead of all that cost, looking at the township side, we look to hopefully get that mostly funded, so it's just 15% of that as a match cost as compared to a full cost. So that is the DCD Greenways grant application, and before you tonight is a resolution that would be included and followed up with for the application with DCED.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I just saw a typo. I was gonna, can we fix the spelling Merrick Road at 2
Yeah.
R's?
Yep.
That's all.
As long as we're talking about the poles, you mentioned the one that's in the basin. So the pole that's to be removed and the pole that has now been placed are literally tethered together, unlike any of the other poles. So that suggests to me that one's holding the other up, and I'm wondering if we have any concerns about that, if there's some additional issues that surround those poles.
The one that's right on the embankment of the basin there, that one in
Yes.
particular? Yeah, I mean, that's part of the process that PICO was doing. So the old one that's going to be removed, they haven't identified as any additional supports that would be needed for the new pole. We can, of course, follow up and see if there's anything for that one, but they didn't
No other
give us
pole-
anything that would say that that pole has
No
any
other
issue by
poles
itself.
look that way. All the other poles are freestanding, and those two are jury-rigged together.
I'll be sure to follow up with them on that. They haven't given us any indication that there would be any issue with the new pole that they put in just the other week.
Pico's switched all their infrastructure over to the new poles, right?
Correct.
But all of the other ones on the darker poles, the shorter, darker poles have not. Is that,
That's correct, yeah. They wait until Pico's all done their work, so that's the next step, is for them to move their equipment.
right? And there's some areas where there's piles of dirt around some of the poles that were moved or haven't been moved yet, and there's some, so they're gonna fix all that too, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. So happy to answer any additional questions, but it would be the resolution that is requested to have, signed and then included with the grant application.
Any additional questions? No public comment? I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Abstain?
Okay, passes 301. Agenda item 8D, Resolution 24-14, DECD Flood Mitigation Grant Application for Basin Retrofit Projects in Rock Run Watershed.
Thank you. The last two, as I mentioned, are stormwater projects, also both DCED funding opportunities from the end of May. So similarly, the resolution, and they're completely acceptable to this if the meeting doesn't line up with their deadlines, that we would follow up with the resolution from the township to include with the grant package. The first here is the flood mitigation grant application. That is looking at funding for the basin retrofit projects in the Rock Run watershed. The ones in particular at Marple Court and Pondview Court as part of the PRP, as they're listed as potential projects for pollutant reductions. The requesting amount for those two significant basins, $425,000 would be looked to have grant funded, and then there is a 15% match with that. So at this point, these grant applications are looking, as with the last one, looking to just assist when we hear back whether it's grant funding that can cover a majority of the cost with these projects, or the alternative is that it's planned to budget at a certain point with either next year's budget or somewhere in the PRP up to 2027. But these were identified with staff as ones that really had a good opportunity. Hopefully with grant funding, perhaps we can have them in as a 2025 project.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to vote on, put forward Resolution 24-14, the DCED Flood Mitigation Grant Application for Basin Retrofit Projects in Rock Run Watershed.
Is there a second?
Second?
Is there any supervisor comment, questions? Public comment, questions? No light? I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Agenda item E.
One nay.
Oh, pardon.
One nay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that revises the vote to 3-1. Agenda item E, consider resolution 24-15 DCED Watershed Restoration Protection Grant application. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Are there questions? Okay. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Abstain, so the vote is 3-1. And we'll move on to item 9, finance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. You hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we have 3 items on the agenda tonight. The first one is capital projects funding. And if you could put the first slide up. Let me just tell you, we're doing something a little different here. We did a 5-year capital plan. I don't think there's been one in ever, maybe, or at least in recent years. So, obviously it's best practices to plan for the future and, see so there's fewer surprises. We're going to do a capital budget this year, and it's also going to include a 5-year outlook. All department heads, I've already worked with Monica, Isaac, and Derek to come up with a partial list. This will be refined in September at budget season, presented to the board. The board will be asked their priorities, we'll discuss it then and see what the board wants to fund. But the real and we can briefly touch on the projects, but basically I want to talk about how we can fund the projects. So if you go next slide, please. Okay, it's just the agenda. We're going to go over the current debt schedule, the need for capital improvements, capital projects funding for next year, the 4 years after that, and then beyond. And we'll talk a little bit about open space funding since that has come to light, and some other considerations. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, it's a little hard to say, but I printed a copy for you at the dais as well. What's important to note here in the current 2024, the first line, 12/31/24, we're paying $1.4 million in debt service. We have some bond issues that are going to be paid off over the next couple of years. That's going to drop down to $682,000. That $750,000, what that will allow us to do is borrow additional money without having to raise real estate taxes for debt service, because we're reducing the capacity. So the same millage that the township imposes now will be able to get us some additional projects when, if the board wants to take that under advisement. There's only 4 issues outstanding currently, and you see them there. So we're not overburdened with debt. Next slide, please. And again, I apologize. This is more for the public than you folks, because you guys know all this already. The need for capital improvements. We have some older facilities, the township building, park facilities, pools, golf course, public works building, vacant parcels of land that we own that we may want to consider developing, such as the Snipes, 5 Mile Woods, Patterson Farm. Stormwater issues and mandates that come to us that Isaac leads us through, public safety for police and fire, and any projects that they may have, and then circulation, which includes roads, parking lots, bike paths, anything that gets people from point A to point B, and along with that, the ADA compliance. So that presents, that's a real quick snapshot, but there's a lot that, as you can see by the 6-year plan, of items that need to be done. Next slide, please. So for 2025, next year, as you know, the interest rates are fairly high right now. I would not recommend borrowing, if we could hold off borrowing money in 2025 and push it to 2026. How we pay for the capital projects in 2025 is a couple ways. One, the enterprise fund activities, the pool will contribute to the pool capital reserve to pay for their projects. The golf club will contribute to the golf capital reserve to pay for their projects. And we have some carryover money from projects that did not completed. We still have a little bit of ARPA. That money will be rolled over, and some money from the capital reserve fund and the 2016 bond proceeds fund. Not all those projects get done. For instance, one example would be Patterson Farm, where we had budgeted around $700,000. We haven't really spent anything yet to date. The committee is now actively involved. We expect it to have get some work done this year. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near that $700,000. We'll roll some of that in, and when we get to the 6-year plan, you'll see I just have some placeholders, some dollar amounts. None of those are set in stone, and again, they'll all be presented to you in the fall. The sewer trust fund has about $23 million. It earned $800,000 this month, Dave, remember?
Yeah, a little over 800,000.
But lost the equivalent of that last month. So, again, we're investing in stocks and bonds, so there's some volatility there. But I've heard some talk from the board, or at least it'd be my recommendation to preserve the bulk of that money, at minimum of $20 million. However we invest it, and of course that's a board decision. Currently it's in the trust, and use those proceeds to help balance the general fund, to be a steady source of revenue for the general fund. At 5% on $20 million, that's $1 million. As you know, with the general fund last year, we were short anywhere from $1.7 to $2 million. We did that through some transfers from other funds, golf funds, some other funds, 1.7 from the capital reserve or bond proceeds fund. It's escaping which one to make this budget, but that's not sustainable practice. Once those funds go away, they're gone. So a steady source of income, you'll see when we present the budget to you in the fall, we have some recommendations for some revenue streams and some cuts to some expenses that we're uncovering that can be saved, but it's still not going to balance that budget. So having a steady source of revenue. So one of the key things that we'd like to recommend is that we use that money for that purpose. But to fund 2025 projects, we would recommend taking $3 million of that. We expect the year-end balance to be between $24 and $25 million. So if we take $3 million from that, it'll be 21 or $22 million. Again, which my recommendation would be to not ever touch that, or ever is a long time, but to not touch that, and transfer that money to the general fund and use $3 million from it one time to get us through 25. We'll see what the interest rates do. Maybe it'll be a more favorable condition in 2026 to borrow money. Okay, next slide, please. So for 2026, again, through 2029, four-year plan. As I mentioned earlier, we have $750,000 of debt that comes off the books between 2025 and 26. We also, we won't know till the audit is completed for 2023, which is underway now, but we have approximately $8 million in the sewer operating fund, nothing to do with the proceeds of the sale, just the sewer operating money left over, maybe a hair under $8 million. So we're recommending, and again, this is not for any decision-making tonight, this will be in the fall as part of budget season, but we're recommending that we use that $8 million and issue $10 million. Again, we won't have to raise the ceiling, we won't have to raise real estate taxes for that to borrow $10 million. That gets us $18 million. Again, that's $4.5 million a year for 4 years. That should cover our projects. That's all the projects that can't be covered by another source. We have grants. We have the golf club contribution for capital. We have the swim club contribution for capital. This would be for the funds that we don't have another source of funds for. 2000 and beyond, the board could consider increasing debt millage for additional borrowing needs. One additional mill would generate revenue to cover approximately $7.3 million in borrowing. And again, that's just approximate due to interest rates and what rate we're able to borrow the money at. Borrow the money. Next slide, please. Okay. And again, a couple of meetings ago, we heard from, I guess, somebody from the Open Space Committee or Land Preservation.
EAC. Yep.
EAC.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Thank you. The EAC committee talking about wanting to have the township borrow $15 million. I think was the number I heard thrown around. So source of funds for that, we'd have to do a borrowing from a bank note or a bond issue. Additional real estate tax may be necessary to fund that. And most important is if the board's willing to do a referendum on this to ask the voters about this, is that we make sure that the funds can be used not only to acquire property, but to improve the property that we're acquiring, or to improve property we already own, like Patterson Farm or the Snipes, and so on. That would, we'd work with Maureen on wording on a referendum for that. Next slide, please.
And so just
Yep.
Yeah, so that language, the flexibility of that language is consistent with the resolution that was passed by the board previously when the board did take out electoral debt for purposes of open space acquisition. Was that multi-purpose? And I think you guys were involved in that in the past. So it was acquisition, improvement, again, improvement of existing and improvement of proposed, so.
I do think that if there is going to be a referendum specific to open space, that we have to be very transparent with our voters.
Sure.
So that they know that what they're voting for. If they
Sure.
really just want open space acquisition, then that's what we should give them.
Yep, that's a good point.
If they don't, if they want more flexibility, then we should listen to them there too. So that's,
Yep.
I know from a financial perspective, there's always a desire to be able to do whatever we can with whatever funds we have, but we also have to be, personal opinion, there's a spirit of a referendum sometimes that we should probably be following. So I just want to be thoughtful about that.
How do we do that? Like, how do we find out from the majority of the residents what their will is, either let's pretend they all say, we do want a referendum on open space, we do want a referendum on open space that includes capital improvements, or we don't want, as much as we love open space, we're hearing about all these taxes and we're concerned. How do we ask them before we have someone drafting a referendum and then put it before them?
It's a good question. I think we try to get as much, honestly, try to get as much feedback as we can through as many different methods ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with you.
I haven't heard anything other than you're killing us with taxes, which,
Yeah.
you know, maybe I'm just hanging out in the wrong places.
Yeah, no, I get you.
Certainly,
And then when we write the referendum, make sure it's pretty clear, and then we message what it is and see how they vote. And if
Well-
we get feedback that, we'd rather, maybe they vote the referendum down because they wanted something else, then we try and get that feedback and maybe do a new referendum.
Did we agree to the referendum concept?
That was going to be one of my questions during other business,
Okay.
actually.
We
So I'm not
don't
sure.
have a draft referendum
Yeah.
developed yet for us to review. That's coming.
Yeah, but I don't even remember asking anyone to draft one. Like, this board had agreed a number of years ago that when we were going to engage, we would agree to engage, and so I don't even remember asking anyone to draft one.
I believe,
I could be wrong.
No, I have to go back and look a few meetings ago when
Yeah.
when it
I
was
think
discussed.
I
the
believe it was
board
my very
did.
first meeting that
Yeah.
it was
Yes.
discussed, so
Oh,
I
yeah,
have
no,
that on.
the EAC definitely asked. I just don't
No,
remember, and I could be
Yeah.
totally wrong.
yeah, it was,
Yeah, so
I thought we had,
I
but
think you
Yeah.
had some direction from the board
Yeah.
based on that,
I
didn't
I
you,
do.
Marie?
I believe it was my
Yeah.
first meeting, so that was part of my report, and maybe we can just jump ahead to that right now while we're discussing, is that I thought we received directives to prepare a referendum. It is, but it was very loose as far as what it was, as far as, I mean, the only thing that was mentioned was $15 million. We usually look at millages versus dollars. I know that it was represented that the EAC had identified a few properties that they were interested in. But again, this all comes down to timing as well, because a referendum has to follow certain policy procedures, and we're really coming up against the 11th hour, so to speak, as far as getting it on the ballots for in November. So with your permission approval, we can go forward and prepare something and have it before you next meeting.
and
But I
that was,
probably-
I believe, board intent, yeah.
To Suzanne's question, I mean, there's certainly a lot of informal ways to get this done. I mean, certainly you have all the social media where you can put
Exactly.
out that information, the website information. With Monica's blessing, maybe you have a survey at the swim club as people come in, you hand them in it and have a box for them to put it in as they leave. I mean, we get a great attendance there. I mean, that's a lot of people there. Any events that we have, we could have a paper survey in the township building and community center. Is it going to get everybody? No, but it's a start. There's a lot of informal ways you can do it.
what's our, I have 11 Tuesdays in my head for some reason.
13 Tuesdays.
13, even
13
better.
Tuesdays,
yes.
Couple extra weeks. So where's 13 Tuesdays before the election or 13
Yeah, actually, it's worse for us because it has to be to them 13 Tuesdays before, not
So we
11
gotta
Tuesdays before.
advertise and all
Yeah,
that
so
other
it
stuff.
sort of
Yeah.
accelerates it. To Barry's point, that's what I was going to suggest to answer Supervisor Blundy's question is, so social media would probably be your best way to do it. I don't know if you'll ever know until it's voted upon.
Yeah.
So it may be one of those things where if you're interested in it, we prepare it, we do it, and it will come to a vote. And that's the only way that we'll ever find out if it's acceptable.
And just remember, once, as Dave told me before, once the referendum is passed, you don't have to borrow the money the following year. You have, until you find a property or properties that you want to buy.
Yeah, as you know, there's a 10-year validity period
Yeah,
on
so
that, so.
We don't have to jump and do it, but if.
Again, our general recommendation, to the extent that this is the direction of the board, would be probably to borrow in increments, and that's why the number of 15 was talked out about as a potential. It probably would make sense to do more, 5, and then if you are successful, then do another 5, and then if you're successful, then do another 5, as opposed to, and again, there's different mechanisms that can be done in terms of structures.
The last time we did a referendum, I think it was 2004 2004, 3, 4, 5, somewhere around that time, or later, roughly that time. But we didn't use that funding for many years after, meaning no action was taken, no bonds were issued, no properties were purchased until 2016.
Yeah, so it was a 2008 referendum.
Yeah,
The borrowing
there we go.
occurred in 2016.
Yep, yeah,
And
so-
then activity occurred, yep, so.
So it's an 8-year gap. So it's our chance to ask the voters what they think, and I guess it's a question of how we craft the resolution, and certainly want to have the, discussion about how much flexibility and how we want to poll people. And then
Yeah.
we also need to communicate that there may be a very long lag, to your point, of when we actually get a property that is purchasable.
Yeah. And does that $8 million grant that we're attempting to get at the federal level, does that allow for purchase of open space as well if it's?
So there was, within the context, there was some discussion about, I think we did put property acquisition as a potential use of those funds.
Yeah.
So again, if it, there's a nexus or you can relate it, I'm sure we could, yeah, absolutely.
There's also federal land, am I saying it right? Federal land and water conservation grants out there, which can be used, to preserve properties. I'm familiar with that. We've done that. I've done that in the past.
Yeah, and the
It's
last
50%
time
match.
we did this, we used a combination of funding sources, including a county open space bond funding. That's all been used up, and the county may choose to issue another bond for that, at which time we could choose to potentially use that as a source of funds for open space as well. So there are a lot of different ways to find funding sources, but I think for us, what Barry's suggesting in terms of tiering out debt, especially in a higher rate environment, is the best, because we don't want to be holding cash that we don't.
There's no reason
Yeah.
to be paying interest on stuff that
Yep.
spending.
Yeah, and ultimately, the items that, Vice Chair Grenier raises, I mean, those are direction that we need for you. I was just pointing out that the structure of the previous one provided that flexibility, but to your point, if there's a desire to have a more restricted use, then you could absolutely do that, so.
And we might even be able to do a line of credit or letter of credit so that we're drawn down as needed, so we're not.
Yeah, we talked about bank loans particularly if we're doing increments of, 5 million, you could potentially do a bank loan and have a you're not paying interest on something you don't draw on, so.
Okay. The other handout I gave you was just, again, our current debt schedule and 3 scenarios. It wouldn't look good on the screen, that's why I just handed it out. It would be too small for the screen, but just gives you some options. You pay a little more interest up front, and then your annual costs are lower. There's wraparound financing to keep your costs level over time. But basically, in the scenarios, in column 5 and column 9 are the subtotals for what we currently have now, plus a new $10 million issue. The last 2 columns on each section are for open space, if we added that in. So you can see in the first scenario, option 1, with the 25, and we would borrow money for open space for a 25-year period, matching up the useful life with the amount of borrowing. Land has a much more longer life than buildings and so on, so you're allowed to borrow for a longer period of time. With that being said, that's about $350,000 over 25 years to pay back. And you can see under scenario 1, our debt would actually go up to $1.6 million as compared to the 1.4, so a slight variation, and then stay at that 1.6 for a good number of years. And then the second option would be about almost 1.6, and the third option would be 1.4. But then you're paying more interest up front for that, and you have more debt in later years. So you're paying more interest initially, and then you're reducing principal in later years. These are just 3 scenarios. There's an infinite number of different scenarios that we could do. I'm presenting this just to give you some idea of what a bond issue would do and what a open space bond issue or loan would do. Lastly, and I asked Monica and Mike and Derek to be here because they were instrumental in doing this 5-year plan, which you have before you as well. Again, this is very preliminary. There's a lot of missing pieces. For instance, you'll see in orange Makefield Phase 1, 2, and 3. Monica's working with the consultant to come up with numbers for that. Patterson Farm, the committee's really just starting to hit the ground now. We're going to develop, a multi-year plan for those funds as well. We're not sure if it's taking the direction of a nonprofit running it and how the money will be spent, but we wanted to put placeholders here so you can see a lot of the things. So obviously we have aging buildings, so we're recommending some HVAC down the road and some other improvements to the buildings, parking lots. Obviously stormwater, the PRP plan. Monica has a number of projects recommended for Memorial Park and Pocket Parks, Veterans Square, and some tennis courts, and you see the list there. Again, a request will be sent out June 24th to all department heads, and Isaac requesting a one-page form for each capital project, detailing the cost, whether it's an immediate need or it could wait next year or it could wait longer, whether it's something that's being mandated by DEP or some other agency that we need to do right now, and we'll finesse all that and put it in a presentation to you folks at that time. But it's an ambitious list. If you have any questions about any projects or want to talk about any projects, I got people got my back here.
Again, the intent was not to necessarily get into a tremendous amount of detail this evening, as Barry's sort of PowerPoint presentation. It was more about, a potential strategy as we're moving forward. The concept of potentially doing the one-time draw from the trust assets. Again, trying to preserve about $20 million of principal so that there's, reoccurring distributions, interest distributions to help with operating expenses moving forward. And then, again, this is, as he started, this is sort of the first time that you're seeing all of the assets that we have, the extent of assets we have. Again, some of these may be priorities for the board, some may not. We'll go through that process, but this is the beginning work, and then the work that Concord put together is, again, just to show sort of the existing capacity under the existing debt service millage rate as existing debt falls off. That's really the intent of that. So,
and again, Concord Public Finance is a financial advisor. We have, so they would be looking to, at some point, see if they can be our financial advisor for any future bond issues. If the board wishes to do that at a later date, we can do that. But so far, they don't charge you anything. They want your business, so they prepare probably 10 iterations of this already. Right? Every time they sent one, we asked for another one. But they were real good in helping us get this off the ground. Any questions on PowerPoint?
Sure. Quick question. So one thing I notice is that we don't really have vehicles on here. So, and so we have a plan for vehicle replacement?
We do. Actually, one department has one for his fleet, pretty well mapped out. I'm going to work with the chief and Park and Rec to get a more formal plan. Everything gets assigned a useful life. A patrol car might be 3 or 4 years. A detective car or a command staff car might be 8-year useful life. Small dump trucks are typically 8 to 10. Larger dump trucks are 20 to 25. I work with the different departments to come up with that schedule. And then, so this is capital projects as opposed to capital equipment. So It's not included here. Those items will either be budgeted within the department budget, or I'm working towards like a central, I don't want to create any more funds, but another fund that each department pays into, and then you buy their vehicles or lease their vehicles as they come due. And what that does, it prevents you from, 1 year the chief needs 8 cars, 1 year it's 2, so you don't have these big dips because maybe Public Works only needs 1 truck this year and 2 next year. So it sort of levels the playing field a little bit, so it takes some of the volatility out for the township to make those decisions of which vehicles to purchase.
So just one last note. I was going to say, I noticed that in 2024 and 2025, that the folks in Public Works have no items. And I would like to thank Derek and the Thin Orange Line that keeps us safe each and every day. The fine works in our Public Works team. But I do see a $6.5 million one out there. as well. So, but that's many years out, so we'll certainly talk about that at that time.
Again, as I mentioned to you at a previous meeting, one of my goals is we have a good start with it already. Derek's done a good job of mapping out township assets and assigning useful lives, and so it becomes an in perpetuity fixed asset schedule. So you pave Edgewood Road in 2025, you put that back on for 2045. It's there, you do an inflation factor, over 20 years, and it's a placeholder. Millions of things can change between now and then, but it's a place to start, and it's a guide.
Any other supervisor questions, public comment? If you have public comment, please come on.
Zachary Rubin, 1661 Covington Road. I rise to a point of information. We sold our sewer system to Aqua for $53 million. Since subsequently, we put $21 million in the sewer trust fund. Tonight, I heard that 17 million of that is probably going to go into capital funds. The previous board had said that $17 million was going to subsidize some of the customers from Aqua and to keep the rates down, and that $17 million was going to go back to Aqua, so they really made $60 million from our fund. Now, has that changed?
So, respectfully, what happened as a result of the proceeds of the sewer sale was the purchase or the payoff of significant debt of the township, particularly golf related debt that was in a cycle of increasing. And at that time, some members had considered a consumer benefit fund, which would have essentially taken that money and kind of given it back to Aqua, if you will.
That's what I brought
Yeah,
up, yes.
and that was rejected instead for a trust fund. The trust fund has some very specific parameters around how the funds are invested and how draws can be taken from the trust fund such that the principal is preserved. So the question is naturally, I think Barry kind of brought up to the beginning, which was that the core of the trust would remain at its base amount, if not higher, so that we're not depleting it.
Well, I happen to support that. So just for a clarification, so that $17 million that was going to go back to Aqua has basically been abandoned by this board.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I don't know that it's for today, but I don't know that I 100%, and I admit that I was not here for the whole thing, but one of the things I would like to talk about is there a way to use some of the sewer proceeds to help offset the rising sewer costs that are coming in? Now, just my idea, and I floated out there, and I know now is not the time for the conversation, but I think we should think about it at some point.
Did you want to move on to agenda item 9B, draft purchasing policy?
Yes, draft purchasing, this is, I think, number 4 or 5 of the policies I brought before the board. A lot of purchasing is dictated by state law, so most of this policy comes from the state law, the bidding thresholds, the thresholds for getting 3 quotes. Where we varied a little bit is that the manager and I think that we should require departments to get quotes for anything over $4,000. Even though the state says you can do it up to 12.6, it will help us get us better pricing. So, someone's buying a generator or something, rather than just go to Lowe's and pick one off the shelf, maybe shop at Home Depot or a local hardware store or whatever, and get 3 prices and do that. We think it's not going to have a huge impact, but every little bit helps, and we think that will go a long way towards saving the township. We'll go a short way towards saving the township money. The board still maintains authority for unbudgeted items over a certain dollar threshold, which is in here. The purchasing thresholds are $12,600. So anything over $12,600, below $23,200 and $12,600, you need three written quotes for. And again, we're requiring that you get it for anything over $4,000. The policy also recommends, when possible, to do intergovernmental joint purchasing. I've been a big fan of that for a lot of years. I've done that in previous townships where we had 4 townships going on a stump grinder, and you just work out a little agreement where it's housed, who pays the insurance, and then you just split the costs. If it's for items and things that you don't use every day, bucket truck could be one, if, things like that would sit idle a lot of time. If other townships use it, you can go in on that. So it recommends we look into that wherever possible. We also give the opportunities for minority and women business owners the ability to have a fair level playing surface, and environmentally friendly purchasing. It makes recommendations to procure products that are deemed certified or more environmentally friendly. That's the nuts and bolts of it. It's making it a little more formal, and again, the main thing where we deviate from the state is requesting 3 quotes for anything over $4,000.
Quick question for you, Barry. Is this, when we're talking about purchasing policy, is this mostly for widgets, or is this for any type of procurement, let's say RFPs for engineers or other types of procurement?
It's mostly for supplies. Well, it is addressed in here for RFPs for consulting services, so I think that's the last page.
Yeah, so on page 4, we tried to just, again, codify sort of the general express preference of this body in the past, that, consistent with best practice in circumstances where professional services are not subject to public bidding requirements, the township will periodically issue requests for proposals, and that we would generally issue those in a 3 to 5 year sort of time horizon.
Yeah.
So we tried to incorporate, again, some flexibility, but also sort of memorialize at least some of the things that we've been hearing or have been expressed by, prior boards. Same thing with DBE, WB, MBE participation or environmental friendly purchasing. Again, those are sort of expressed as ambitions, goals, but not, they're not sole determinants of making, purchasing choices. They're just, make sure people are mindful of those items as we're making choices.
Yeah. With respect to, I guess it's 1-105 where we get DB, MB, WB participation, I might add in there veteran-owned and small business, certified small businesses as well.
Yeah, that's fine.
Similar
Yeah.
reasons. And then I think for most of the RFPs that we've put out there the last several years, we've had some specific questions that we ask of our solicitors and our engineers and others about various things that I think we could add into this on
We can
some level.
incorporate that as well, yep.
I think for the most part, anytime we're doing professional consulting, like a new accounting firm, we're gonna have we're gonna have interviews with them and have questions, and then have a scoring system to score all those. I think as far as adding the veterans and what was the other one you said?
Small business.
Small business. I think that doesn't require an amendment. I think we just make that change and have the board vote on that. I think that's.
Yeah, again, we're not looking for action this evening. It's just
we're not
sort of
voting on
begin.
anything.
Yeah, there's-
But those
just
are
presentation.
good. Those are good points, and we can incorporate those.
One element that I think, and I'm not sure how to codify it in policy, but, and maybe it's a training process of what we're expecting in procurement process from department heads and managers, such that not only do we get multiple bids, that we are aggressive in planning out and structuring out projects such that we don't have unanticipated expenses, that when we go to ask for bids, and that we're specific about requests and making sure that we don't overscope, those sorts of things. That's difficult necessarily to codify. And I know we've talked collectively about it in parts in terms of, working together as a team to train around that. So I'm not sure if that's sort of like something that we can be thinking about training-wise around procurement. And this is something to talk about. And it's there are techniques when you're buying for an enterprise that are different than when you buy for yourself, but the same level of, cheapness, for lack of a better term,
Absolutely.
needs to be there. So if you're spending the money like it's your own money,
That-
yeah, you know,
You're taking my thoughts, so exactly.
Yeah.
I tell anyone that will listen to me, spend township money like it's your own, and
Yeah.
we'll get a better deal. Don't just buy, you wouldn't just go buy a generator off the shelf for your house.
Yep, yeah.
And I'm not picking on any departments here, but, you know, you wouldn't do that for your
Yeah.
house, don't do that for the township.
Yeah.
You know, seek the best deal, and.
yeah, and you know, I know, you know, it's the same thing with like travel. We don't travel here, but like you could go through all of my expense reports and you're like, I'm probably one of the cheapest travelers ever.
So, next meeting will be the travel policy.
Okay.
Before you. It's in draft form now, Dave's reviewing it. But yeah, you know, it talks about meal allowances and so on.
I mean, we're just trying to, again, create some level of consistency because, you know, the general observation, and it's not unique to here, but there's been inconsistency on certain things. And so, you know, this is helpful for us from a staff perspective as well to understand sort of what our guide rails are and what the expectations are in terms of us, you know, being involved in sort of the day-to-day of the municipality here. So that's really the intent.
I notice we don't have any public comment in the room, but I'm seeing the light on for the first time. And caller, state your name and tell us if you live in Lower Makefield.
While that's happening, Barry, if we could just relabel that 2104 to be anti-kickbacks or something that makes it clear we're not promoting kickbacks, we're in fact prohibiting
I'm sorry,
them.
what number was that?
The
2-104.
kickback section.
Yeah. Do we have the
you.
caller on the line?
Yes. Hi, my name is Lori Gray, and I am a resident of Lower Makefield Township. I wanted to thank Barry for his presentation on the funding of capital projects, and I was just wondering if that presentation would be available online, and if so, where would I be able to find that?
Yeah, we can put that online tomorrow, Dave, right? It's not
Yeah, that's
not an
not
issue.
fine.
So if you go, we'll put it under the Finance Department tab, so if you want to look there for it.
This is also a
Great,
draft.
thank you so much.
It's a
Yeah.
draft.
It's a draft policy, so I don't
Yeah,
know
it
if
is
it's
draft.
quite
In fact,
ready for-
we'll
yeah.
put the draft.
Yeah.
watermark on
I
there,
think
too.
Ms. Gray is referring to the PowerPoint that you put up.
Oh.
So, to make sure that that's
Yeah.
available
Well, yeah.
as well.
And actually, everything that you guys that was, you know, discussed and reviewed tonight, yeah, that would be great. I would appreciate
Yeah,
it.
we'll put it all on the web.
And before you head off, caller, want to make sure we got your name for the record? Just,
Lori Gray.
oh, Lori Gray. Okay.
Lori Gray.
Okay.
Hi, Lori Gray.
Sorry. I'm always thinking of Janelle, who will be transcribing. So thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much.
On to item 9C, Resolution 24-16.
So the board previously adopted a new investment policy. As part of that policy, we indicated and the board approved that no more than 50% of our cash on hand would be invested with any one institution. As a result of that, we got some quotes from banks for the best rates, and we're going to be diversifying our money in accordance with that policy between Univest, Pliget, which we already have an account with. We're going to add a little bit to Pliget. We're going to have a new account with Univest, Santander, and William Penn Bank. And Santander is requesting a resolution for their records, which you have before you, in order to open the account. The other two banks do not require that for whatever
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay. Because people know me, I do work and have worked in financial services industry. I don't have any relationships with Santander. I'm not a shareholder, never been a customer. I don't believe they've ever been a client of my company. So for those wondering at home for potential conflicts of interest, that is my disclosure. And with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Includes
Yep.
my report. We'll bring back the purchasing policy on a future agenda. We'll introduce the travel
Yep.
policy as well. Okay. Thank you.
On to agenda item 10, golf.
Good evening, Board of Supervisors. Just wanted to take a moment to talk a little bit about the driving range. As we're talking about capital today, we had a project that we were interested in pursuing, and we wanted to discuss that this evening. before I do that, I'm going to just quick turn it over to Kevin Byrne, our general manager. I know he had a few quick updates with the golf course that we figured we would make real quick.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us this evening. Just a couple quick updates on behalf of the golf course. We are celebrating our 20th anniversary this summer. We'll be doing that at the golf course July 19th, 20th, and 21st. A Friday night evening with music and games and food and a whole lot of fun. Reservations are going to be recommended for that evening. Saturday, we'll have a golf event on the golf course with food specials, tea gifts, prizes as well. Sunday will then become more of a family day, kids' day, that will have blow-ups and free golf lessons and things like that for kids in the area on Sunday. So to close out the 20th anniversary weekend. So that's a big event coming up, and we're looking to promote that on all our socials, websites, and out there quite a bit. We'll be on TV, we'll be in a bunch of magazines, and we're putting that pretty good out there. Also, coming up in late August will be our Ladies Invitational, which we're going to push very hard this year. It's an 18-hole event for two-person teams, and it's a social gathering, food, prizes, fun. So that will be the next event post-anniversary that we'll really push leading up to that. So those are the two events that we really have on our agenda that we're really looking forward to promoting, and I just want to make you all aware. All right.
Kevin, do you want to note some of the sort of staffing changes that have occurred? I know Supervisor Blundy is somebody going to, had mentioned something at the last Board of Supervisors meeting, but I think there was a...
Absolutely, thank you, Dave. I will certainly do that. I'm a staffing change. I'm, again, Kevin Byrne. I've been with Spirit Golf for a number of years, and have taken a role as general manager at Makefield Highlands this year. I met some of you over the winter, kind of when I was just getting started. Taking over and trying to kind of create some efficient workplace habits and do some good things around the golf course, which I've done for many years, and looking forward to continue to do at Makefield. We hired a new food and beverage manager, Jenna Marshall, who's doing a really, really good job at promoting events, creating a safe and clean work environment for everyone, and trying to create fun events for everybody to come to, music nights, and different menu items and ideas ahead this summer that you'll all see. And most recently, we're thrilled to have Mark Miller, our head chef, back at Makefield once again. So Mark was here a number of years ago, was very successful, did a great job, and kind of created some wonderful menus. He is back a couple weeks now, so we're just getting back on good terms there, getting his ideas in place, and moving forward this year. So those are the three big changes this year, and so far so good. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Kevin's doing a great job. I think what you'll see with the restaurant and some of the excitement going on there, we got new menu kicking off on Friday. So Mark's kind of put together some new menu items. He's going to be showcasing Friday night. We got music, so make your way over to Makefield Highlands. So thank you. I know Chairman Lewis, we've talked in the past about the Top Tracer, and it's 3 years now since we've had the product, and I did want to give a little update for you because I know it's something that's important to you and to the board that we do that. As part of kind of where we are with Top Tracer and where Top Tracer is going, one of the things we're talking about is some improvements to the monitor and bay area that we have. We currently have 3 tents in that area now, which are great and are helpful, but they came out with a product called Cover the Tees. That's a structured cover that they are working with that company, partner with that company to put their product on, and it's pretty amazing. And so I'll talk a little bit about Top Tracer, and then I'll show you Cover the Tees, and we can kind of talk through that. So if we can go to the second, you could probably just jump the second slide. I'm just going to talk about some of the, you can go to the second slide. That's the last. All right, but that's the covers. You see them now. But if you could jump back, I think. Okay. Yeah. There you go. Okay. Great. So yeah, I'm just going to talk some fun statistics and some of the growth that we've had. So go ahead and jump to the next slide, please. So on this slide, you can see this is ball tracing, what Top Tracer does, and you see it on TV on the weekends on the PGA Tour. They're using Top Tracer to actually trace the ball so you can kind of see the ball flying. We have that technology on our driving range. We have it both in monitor and in personal use, so that on the other 18 stalls that we have that don't have monitors, you can use a mobile device, iPad or iPhone or Galaxy, to use and see your ball traced and get your numbers. So basically what you're seeing, and you can see in 21 when we started in July, we traced about 152,000 golf balls a month, and then in 22 that jumped up to about 168. 23 jumped up to about 206,000. So we're seeing that growth each month on the tracing and the use of both the use of the range, more balls being hit, and more people using the product. You could jump to the next slide. Okay, thank you. So you can see here kind of how they're using the product, both monitor and mobile. So monitor's getting a lot of action, but mobile's just about 50%, 48% of our use. So people are going on their devices and tracing their golf balls, which is really great. And you can see kind of how they're using it. So the My Practice is the most mostly used. What they're seeing there, and kind of more like working on your game. Warm-up's kind of a fun way to kind of get started and loosen up and practice. Go Fish is a game we use for the kids a lot, and a lot of fun for them. They eat that up. And the long drive and close to the pin are contest things we do. So throughout the year, we'll have different contests, long drive close to the pin, and they can have a little fun with that. Top Tracer's doing one right now for the U.S. Open. So we got the U.S. Open at Pinehurst this year. So we'll be doing a contest for the 6th hole at Pinehurst throughout the week of the U.S. Open, the 6th through the 11th, or no, sorry, 11th through 10th through for the whenever the Open is. It's coming up. So that's kind of where things are, and you can kind of see just kind of where that activity is. So we can jump to the next slide. Can you go to the next slide? Okay. So just some areas of growth, kind of things we see. And this is kind of tying back to where we envision with Cover the Tees or having a structured cover there. The proposal that we're making on the covers offers 6 bays. So we have 6 monitors now, 6 bays that they actually have individual bays for. Right now, you're sharing a tent, basically. So we have 3 tents, and you have to share them. So with 6 bays, you'd have individual bays. 2 of those would actually be fully enclosed bays, so they could be opened up fully or closed, so that kind of extends your season with launch monitors and other devices that we have for fitting or teaching and coaching that can be used. So it kind of puts us in a place. Golf simulators are kind of like exploding out in the market right now. We don't really have a place to put golf simulators in our clubhouse, so this is a great opportunity for us to actually get covered bays and also be in the position to turn 2 of them into simulators. So corporate events obviously gives you a lot of opportunity. Outings, when we're doing our outings, there's a lot of people who don't play golf but kind of want to be participants in a golf outing who get kind of, they shy away from it. This is a great opportunity for us to give them another option. So they don't have to go on the golf course. They can kind of hang for a couple hours on the bays, have some fun, kind of what you're seeing with Top Golf. And they can eat a little bit, hang out, and then still participate in the end with the event. So kind of fun stuff. Obviously off season, it extends our off season with the covers. So again, just continues to give us some more growth opportunity. we can go to the next one. Next slide. Okay. Okay, thank you.
While we're buffering, if you will, you kind of left out the money slide or money shot on this.
Here it comes.
Oh,
The money always makes small now. I want to make it big. Kev,
so.
why don't you grab those? I have hard copies there.
So we've monitored 200,000 balls a year roughly.
Yeah, so where we are now, this is the slide that was coming up. So total revenue, we took the 218 to 220 revenues. Total revenue 218 to 220 was 468,991. We average $156,000 a year.
What
Since
was our
Top
initial
Tracer.
investment? What was our initial investment?
Just about 75,000.
So we paid for it in 6 months.
So Top Tracer now, the last 3 years, that revenue went to 636, so 167,000 we made in 3 years more. So we paid for it basically in the first year.
In the first year,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep, so.
That's your braggable right there.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's
'Cause
really good numbers.
Remember you came, I said.
Yeah.
You said the payout. That's great news.
Yeah, it is. It's really.
I mean, everyone wants to have their ball monitored, right? But making money is the good part.
Yeah, so it does, and it's, it's nice that, A, it's making more money, but at the same time, providing a service and a product that I think people really love. So you can see the annual increase is kind of where we're at. So Bay Rentals themselves, actually rental cost, we're making about $12.7 a year right now, on top of the golf balls that we're selling. So it's a pretty good average. So if we jump to the next slide.
Mike, can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
Is that your net or your gross, like, on this? So, like, is there cost associated?
There's,
like,
a little bit of
some
overhead,
O&M
mostly
type of
golf
stuff?
balls.
Yeah.
So you got golf balls, and then labor is kind of tricky because we have labor, but we have labor there anyway because they have to be staffs there to kind of, so you got a little bit of labor and some, the cost of the golf ball, basically.
I know a
Some
guy with
mats and things.
75,000 golf balls I can get for you real cheap.
We need them. We go through a lot of them.
He's collected them for years.
Where are we? Okay, so we're on the pricing real quick. So this is kind of the fun thing too. We looked at our numbers with Top Tracer. They gave us the market standard, kind of where our price is per golf ball we did it by, and where the market is with other golf courses that have Top Tracer. And we're actually a little low still. So there's still some growth in the price, we think. So we're collecting about 17 cents a golf ball. Market price is about 20 on a large bucket. Our current prices, you can see large buckets about 17, mediums 18 cents, and we're looking in 25. Obviously makes some small increase in price. We'll get up to about 22 on the medium and get to the market average of 20 on the large. That alone brings about 37,000 more dollars in per year. So that's kind of a nice increase right there. And then if we flip to that last page that we kind of started with, there you go. So this is kind of where we were. We budgeted for this year to have some upgrades to the range. This was the product that we're looking at. So this is basically what it looks like. Ours will actually have 2 of the bays fully enclosed. So you'll actually have sides and garage doors on both ends. So 2 of them will be fully enclosed. That cost is about $100,000. And then again, our ROI, we're thinking 3 years. I'm taking the golf ball price out, not including the golf ball, but what we think we'll make with extra bay rental and event revenue. So with bay rental, we're going to make $70,000 more a year. So, with golf ball increases. So we're looking at, what we see as, again, a nice, easy 3-year ROI on this for this capital and really make a nice improvement. So that's kind of where we were, and I'll leave it up, I'll leave it up
Sounds
to the
good.
board to kind of think about that.
The event revenue, that's rental of the bay, or is that contemplating any increase, like F&B revenue associated with?
Yeah, a little bit of both. So
Okay.
you get rentals on the bays, obviously, so we think that piece will go. But these bays are different than what we have now because they're 25-foot deep, so there's actually a social area that you build into them. So in the backside, you have tables and chairs and sitting areas, kind of what you see at Topgolf. So they can have food run up to them and drinks and kind of have a good time because, having them more individual is going to make it a lot nicer than what we have today. Yeah. Any questions?
I have one. Do you have like a detailed scope of work of what this $100,000 covers?
Yeah, so the company itself, they do a pre-engineered, structured, these awnings, these covers, they're aluminum. So they're all pre-designed, pre-engineered, stamped, everything. So they're ready kind of to go. They have their own anchoring system, so we do not need to put any footings in the ground. So we can get, I can get those, for if someone's interested in looking at the actual engineered drawings. But that's how they do it. So it's all pre-done. Obviously we go to permit for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But before that, if I could, I don't think we can take action today.
Yeah, that was not the intention
Okay.
This evening. Again, it was sort of an introduction of
Yeah.
the project. I know the solicitor is, there's still some items I think that are outstanding in terms of, whether this truly sort of meets sort of proprietary standards as
Right.
it relates to bidding and those kinds of things.
Sure.
And so I think you said you were going to, I know you did follow up once, but I thought there was something else that was going to be
Yeah,
forthcoming.
they said they were going to give us another follow-up with Top Tracer themselves because obviously they partnered with Top Tracer, cover the Ts, to be their exclusive provider, meaning that the system itself has some proprietary pieces to it with the anchoring system and such, but with Top Tracer, it's designed to hold the cameras, hold the monitors, so it's all pre-engineered for those things. So,
Relative to pre-engineered,
Mhm.
Jim's not back there, is he? No.
Who's Jim, you said?
Majewski's
Oh,
not
yeah,
in the room.
yeah, no.
But I know.
He may be on the line, I'm not
Well,
certain. No.
it's just, yeah, it's just with some of the pre-engineered stuff, we have to be careful that it meets our building code.
Sure, yeah.
I've been through this before on some of the stuff that I do, and sometimes it sounds like it will, but then when
Yeah.
the building inspector looks at it, says, nah, you gotta do X, Y, Z.
Yeah,
You know,
no, I
whatever it
mean,
may be, so we just wanna make sure that we get to see that, and folks like Jim or.
sure.
or
Yeah,
whoever
no,
else
that would
gets to see
be,
it.
obviously, we would go to normal permitting process and review, just like you would, so. Yep.
And now the 100,000, is that to purchase this, or is that including installation and all the costs associated with it?
That's all installed.
Okay, so you would add monitors, is there heating in there or anything?
We have the monitors already, so they come with the anchor, the supports for the monitors, and they actually work with Top Tracer, so Top Tracer comes with them, and it's like a 2 to 3 day install. So Top Tracer does the install of the monitors once they put the
So
system
how many
in
bays
place.
is this adding in total?
It replaces the 3 tents we have, so it's 6 covered stalls. So they're individual instead of, right now we have two monitors per tent.
Okay,
Yeah.
and is there any heaters or anything? Because you were saying the benefits of winter, so,
Well, we can enclose them, so we'll have some space. There's heater, so lighting and heating is in the options too. So not in the 100,000 for the heaters themselves, but
and is their electrical service good enough out there to support what you're adding?
yes, yeah, we did electric when we did the initial, so we pulled electric there. So I think there's, because the lights are nothing. The lights are obviously very, very little. The heaters are a little bit more. But yeah, they thought what we had would be sufficient for that. And again, we would obviously confirm all that beforehand.
Okay,
I guess I'm curious, there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of electrical, there's other things going to it, right? What happens, once they install it, do they maintain it? Do you have to?
So
sign
Top
up for
Tracer is just part of our contract, so yeah, they obviously maintain the monitors are part of our contract. So all that is maintained. The electrical is on us. When we did that, that was part of the initial cost that we had to bear to pull the electric and the wiring over to the range.
But the new bays and all that, the structural stuff, that's on us. I'm sure there's some warranty.
Yeah,
after
there's
that, it's on
warranty.
us.
I don't have it right in front of me, but yes, there's warranty. Yep.
I want to talk about the birdhouses.
Yeah, we have about 30 of them up this week. So,
Yeah, so I was going to tell it at the end of the
Yeah.
meeting, but since he's here, we worked with the EAC to make sure that we're a bird-friendly town, and as part of that, our friends at the golf course, or at our golf course, are putting up birdhouses from the Audubon Society.
Yeah, so additional ones. So we had birdhouses up. Obviously, they were getting deteriorated. And interesting enough, as we were putting in the new ones this week, Cameron said he went into the old ones and there's eggs in all of them. So he can't obviously take them down because there's eggs in them right now. So, but we'll replace some of the older ones as the birds make their way. So yeah, the birdhouses are up, and so you'll see them even around the parking lot, golf course, some of the areas. Yeah, very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other supervisor comments, questions? I'm not seeing any public comment, so Mike, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was good to be here. Thanks.
Yep,
Have a good night.
thanks. We made the poor guy wait 2 hours. Moving on to agenda item 11, manager's report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The first item is a resolution, Resolution 24-17, authorizing and improving deeds of dedication for conveyance of open space and public roadways to the township, authorizing and approving agreements for drainage and access easements, and then there's also easements for the protection of natural resources. These documents were actually executed some time ago by the township. Again, this is the Boxwood Farms subdivision. As you may recall, a couple meetings ago, there was some outstanding items relative to that project that have now been settled with the developer. As part of the settlement with the developer, there was the conditions on completing the required administrative or items relative to the project, and so these are the items that remain. So again, the resolution is authorizing the execution of these documents and the recording where appropriate.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing, hearing none, move to call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous 4-0.
Thank you very much. The next item is to consider authorizing advertisement of a wireless facilities ordinance. As you'll recall, and members of the public may recall, the board engaged Cohen Law Group out of Pittsburgh to update its wireless facilities ordinance requirements. Joel Cohen, who was an attorney with Cohen Law Group, was present at your last meeting, briefed the board on the changes that were made. Again, those changes are to reflect relevant requirements from a federal law standpoint and statute standpoint, any relevant sort of FCC orders, things related to this area of the law. So at this point, if the board is inclined, we could proceed with authorizing advertisement of that ordinance for your consideration.
So moved?
Second?
Is there any supervisor comments, questions, concerns? Any public comment? Not seeing any. There's a whole bunch of people really interested in wireless services. I haven't seen
Yeah, so just
any.
as a follow-up, so Sue, and I apologize, I don't remember Sue's last name, so she did provide some comments on the proposed ordinance. I did provide those to Cohen Law Group. They're reviewing those at this point. But I just, again, just wanted to make note of, she did take the time to do that, so I
Okay.
appreciate
Thank
her
yeah.
feedback on.
But she
on
wasn't
that.
one of the
Yeah,
ones
she-
that was.
Correct.
Yeah.
I understand.
Okay, with that, we'll call the question. All those in favor of advertising the wireless facilities ordinance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 4-0.
Thank you very much. The next item is a slight change, so this would be consider authorizing the chair to send correspondence to the Mercer County Executive regarding suggested noise mitigation measures at the Trenton Mercer Airport. Again, this is a request that's coming from the Township's Airport Review Committee. There actually may be members of the board that are more versed in this issue to be able to speak on this a little bit more. So I'll defer to whether it's the chair or another member.
Supervisor Blundy, did you want to speak to it at all, or?
I mean, I can parrot a lot of what I've heard, but this is definitely not within my skill set. It has nothing to do with what I do for a living. But, you know, essentially, there's a airport on the other side of the river, and as it grows, although they might deny that they're growing, we're asking for help in making sure that they are following the rules. This letter would be going over to New Jersey. And by the way, John, thank you for your work on this and for supporting this ask of the group. But this letter will go to ask them to make sure that they're following the rules in terms of how noise abatement or the way that noise is being handled. And I'd let you or Dan speak to the details.
Well,
Or you, Matt.
yeah, real quickly, there is a voluntary process that the Trenton Mercer Airport can undertake to help and create noise mitigation procedures. They're under no obligation to actually implement those procedures, but they would get support from the FAA. And Lower Makefield has, I should say that the resident in question is actually a Yardley Borough resident who is an American Airlines pilot and actually a safety specialist. And there's a series of technical suggestions in terms of noise mitigation that he's offered. But what we're looking to do is engage Mercer County, and perhaps that they would consider initiating this. It's a Part 150 program that would allow us to begin processes to find noise abatement. And the benefits aren't just for residents of Lower Makefield, they would be for residents on both sides of the Delaware. So it's relatively low risk for Mercer County, for the Trenton Mercer Airport. This is separate from other stuff that we've done in the past, but it's an opportunity to work collaboratively to see if we can get a win-win solution in terms of some noise stuff. And yes, Supervisor Blundy mentioned there is a bit of a disconnect between what they would say to the FAA in terms of their plans for expansion with the new terminals versus what they have said separately. So, and again, market forces often dictate how many landings and stuff will go through that airport. But with that, it's hopeful that we could work together on that. So if everybody's okay with that, we'll send that letter out tomorrow on that as well. And good. Just,
Do you need a motion, or we can just do it?
I think we can just do it, if that's okay with everybody. Now, Isaac, I understand you know somebody that could make sure that Mr. Benson, or pardon me, County Executive Benson will get a good look at this?
We do, yeah. Remington and Vernon does have relationships with folks over on the Jersey side there, so we're happy to help facilitate, the right people getting together to talk about the issues that the township's bringing forward.
Excellent. All right. Move on.
Just one general, I just sort of put as a placeholder general updates. I do have just one update, just so that the board is informed, relative to Patterson Farm and implementation of the Patterson Farm Master Plan. As was mentioned in some of Barry's remarks, the committee is up and running, and they're really doing a great job. They're hitting the ground running. So currently, township staff's currently working with the leadership of the committee that you appointed to work on implementation, to really look at continuing efforts to try to identify financial and technical resources that may be available to support plan implementation and begin some of the remediation efforts that were discussed, soil remediation and then some of the lead-based paint remediation. So right now we have meetings set up with Congressman Fitzpatrick's office to try to understand what federal financial resources may be available to help with implementation, as well as if there's any technical resources available through the federal government. Again, just trying to make sure that we're aware of those and leveraging those where appropriate. We have meetings set up with the Bucks County Redevelopment Authority, who is accustomed to going through Act II environmental clearance processes. Again, both from a technical resource standpoint, they may even have financial resources available as well to help with some of those remediation efforts, and can sort of advise us based on their experience there. So we're meeting with them. We're meeting with a local home builder, DeLuca Homes, who is in the process of working through some of the restoration work of the historic structures on Prickett Preserve. Again, seeing if we can learn anything from their experience, and whether they can perhaps offer some support to this community project. And then we're looking at meeting with some others as well. So a lot of sort of good conversations happening around Patterson Farm master plan implementation, and just wanted to brief the board on that. Obviously, there'll be more specific information forthcoming. I just wanted to make sure you were aware of these conversations that were going on, and also just wanted to take a moment to recognize the leadership being shown by the committee and the efforts that the committee is putting out to try to, again, take advantage of any resource that may be available in order to advance this community project. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to address those. And again, this is just a general placeholder. If there's any questions regarding any other issue, I'm happy to address that as well.
Okay, I'm not seeing any comments, no light. Moving on to agenda item 12, Parks and Recreation. Man, Monica, it's a long day for us, right? We started.
Yeah.
Yeah, 7 a.m. Okay, so today I'm here with a quote for slide maintenance. Slide maintenance is annual maintenance that we do on the slides. We've been using a company for several years, based out of Montana. This year it was very hard to engage them. We reached out to a couple other agencies, same place as Sesame Place. We never heard back from them for a quote, and we were able to get a quote from American Pool, the same company that painted our pool this year. So they did get back to me with a quote of $22,488.54. The quote is much more than what we budgeted. We budgeted $5,600 for slide maintenance. Slide maintenance is definitely needed. We need caulking, and we need all the repair work listed in the quote. I'm starting to get a little concerned about timeline, but I do want to make sure that we do have it approved, and if I can get it done, I will before we open full hours. If not, I have a make it through this year backup plan to use the staff. So I'm asking for permission to engage American Pool for $22,488.54.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Supervisor, discussion?
Just one question. Does this quote include taking care of the cracking that's at that one mount, or does it not?
It wouldn't. That would require a future replacement of those two panels.
Okay. Well, is there any sort of, temporary fix in place? Could this company do it?
I'd have to reach out to them. That would have to be a separate assessment quote. But while they're here, I have them look at. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
To that, and I'll ask you, are there, and I haven't done the tour like others have done, I guess, but just hearing back, are there other issues with the slide that may, this is basically top coat and making it look nice, but are there other issues with the slide that may force it to be closed for a time or slides plural, if they're not addressed, like the cracking you're talking about and a few other things that you.
Somebody should definitely take a look at it and give the assessment of it. It wouldn't be the entire slide, it would be two of the
Two
panels. Where they join together, but somebody should definitely look at it and could probably do a repair on it, but it's something that should be looked at sooner than later.
You mentioned a backup plan?
Yes.
Can you expand on that one?
The plan would be to have our staff caulk the cracks, recaulk the cracks, and polish the slides every 2 weeks throughout the whole rest of the summer. But that would be a holdover until next year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the budget, so the budget in this year's budget was, the number in this year's budget was 5,000, you said?
5,600, yes.
Now we're up to-
Now, we did have savings in painting this year, about, I think it was 40,000. So luckily, we had that savings that we have a little bit of wiggle room.
How are we with pool revenue this year?
You want to, been monitoring that daily, if not weekly, if not daily, but
I
yeah.
haven't seen it.
We're pretty close to revenue. Last year, we're about $6,000 off as far as revenue perspective. So we're gaining a lot of ground every single day, just because the rates are higher. We do have less membership, but as far as revenue goes, we are tracking with last year and slowly but surely creeping on the amount that we made. We're also doing better in daily sales, so daily passes and some of our other lessons and things that than previous years. So those are some other sources of revenue that we're making.
And we still have the August senior option too, correct?
We do.
Okay.
We still have the August passes that will open in about a month. So we'll
Okay.
still have a continual rush until about a week or two after school lets out, and then it'll slow until we get our August rush. But then lessons will open. They open tomorrow at 9 a.m.
I saw your post. You have a couple different types of lessons going on. this
Yeah,
year.
we have one-on-one private, semi-private, and then regular lessons. So session 1 will open tomorrow at 9 a.m. If you would like to register, it's on Community Pass if you already have an account. No, just a slight plug, sorry.
I'm waiting for the radio
I'm taking
voice
after
to
John.
hop in.
John does it so much better.
Toss it. That's a softball
Yes,
for you.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So there's a weekly, on that issue, there's a weekly report. I did get one on Monday. Monica will be issuing, I guess, on Monday. So I'll forward those to the board moving forward as well, just so that you can track it. But again, it's essentially taking that date today, or this year, versus that date last year. So it's
Year over year.
You're at that specific snapshot point, yes. So.
I feel like I'm in a race with last year.
Hey,
Yes.
make it a competition.
Yes.
With respect to now back to this, if this is to be, is there anything, and again, I haven't been there to see what you saw, but if we do this and then have to go back and do what you're talking about and a few other things, does that negate this and do we have to redo it?
No, the cracking I'm talking about is actually on the underside, so repair could be done. The top side that's getting refinished is where you'd actually slide down.
Okay.
That repair might even be a brief, so there'll be a few-day closure of the slides while this happens. It's because, the sides will have to be, it's 2 days while they're working and a couple days of curing.
Yeah.
But we're trying to get it done before we open full hours. So that's like we're kind of in a race against the clock, waiting for paint to come in and all of those things.
And if we had staff do it, we'd have, we wouldn't be getting a company that does this all the time, apparently. We'd be having staff do it.
Our staff wouldn't be doing this. Our staff would be kind of Band-Aiding for the summer, polishing like you polish a boat, polishing the slide every single day, or twice a week. Oh my gosh, every other week. It's been a long day, as John.
And they'd still be spending money on materials.
So this is something, this is maintenance we're supposed to have done every year. So it'd be annual maintenance.
So here's a quick question, and I don't want to belabor this. A few years back, we talked about getting together some type of long-term maintenance contract for the slides, right?
Mhm.
I thought we had initiated that.
We did.
I think it
We're
expired.
way well
Is that
beyond
what-
that. Yeah, we're well beyond.
Time flies, Dan.
Yeah, yeah.
Having fun, right? So have we looked at renewing something like, getting back into something like that to save money long-term?
Sure. The company that we had been using for the long-term plan, we had trouble getting out here this year. They're from
Montana
Montana. Yeah. So that's
Ulster
the
big
challenge.
business, Montana.
Yeah. And we're also a very small account for them. So they do giant water parks. So they come in and they kind of try to fit us in between their bigger projects. So that's really where the challenge lies. While it's a priority to us get our pool open, it's not as much of a priority to them to fit in our timeline, so.
Do any other municipal pools in the area, I'm trying to think of some, have similar slides?
No.
That's
not as
another
large as
reason
ours.
why you want to sign up with the pool at L&T.
That and our high dive and our heated pools, all great amenities. Mhm.
All right.
I'm hopeful that we're going to do this, and when we do this, I think I remember that there's an issue with the curing, that we want to really make sure we follow that timeline and let it cure before we accidentally start the water again and have to restart the curing process, so let's just be tight on that.
Yes, that we've learned from past mistakes that have been made, and we definitely know that we have to wait through the cure to get the slides open. Mhm. We also have someone who works on slides, working on the slide.
And your haircut looks lovely.
Thank you, appreciate that.
With that, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, 4-0.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Go get a few hours of sleep, Monica.
Move on to the solicitor's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, I'd like the minutes to reflect that all the supervisors this evening, in attendance this evening, met in executive session prior to this meeting to
Except
discuss.
James.
Well, I said
Yeah,
in
in
attendance,
attendance.
right,
Okay, yeah.
James was not in attendance, was not in attendance. Met in executive session to discuss litigation matters and real estate matters. The first item under my report is consider authorizing advertisement of the anti-discrimination ordinance, which I believe is in your binders and has been provided to you, both a red line copy and the final copy.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Okay. Any supervisor comments? Any public comments?
Can I make one?
Sure.
Can I get one, it's getting late, but I'll just say I'm glad we're finally here. Let's get it done. The one question I had, and Maureen, you and I talked about this last night at the
We did.
after the zoning hearing board. I'm looking for it. Can you point me to the section about
Sunsetting?
Sunsetting, or potential for
It
sunsetting?
is, it's in the section that I mentioned last evening. I was correct. It was in section 6,
Yeah.
2B. It's a very soft definition, admittedly, and that was by design and at request. If the desire is to make it more stringent, I know you and I spoke about that last evening after
Yeah.
the zoning hearing board. We can certainly do so. It would really just take a quick tweak of that section.
I was thinking about this afterwards. I'm wondering, do we, like any other ordinance, right? We always reserve the right to edit it at some point, amend it, change it, get rid of it, sunset, whatever it may be.
Correct.
Do we even, the simple method, do we even need to have language about sunsetting in here at all?
We don't, we did not, we added this.
Okay.
It was at a request of either someone here or I believe it was one of the supervisors asked us to do so. So we don't necessarily, again, this is a really soft definition of quote-unquote sunsetting. It really just states that if there is another entity, either county or state, that could take over, we have the right to do so. We have the right to bring those actions before them and really not hear them ourselves.
Yeah, and that's fine. I don't want, my one, I don't know if concern is too strong a word or not. I just want to make sure that it doesn't automatically default to that in the event that the county or the state does something on paper that looks like they're going to move forward in a way that I think we'd all like to see, but they don't actually implement it that way. So I just want to make sure that that's not our default setting, that we have reserved the right to see how something is implemented if it is put on paper somewhere, that it is implemented to the point, to our satisfaction for us to actually allow, move forward that way.
So what, I mean, to that end, I mean, it really relates, I guess, to deferral. Is that what we're saying, right, to these
Yes.
other entities?
I don't know that it's deferral as much as, right, we would be superseded because a bigger governmental entity would be doing more and better. Because if they do exactly what we do, that this won't kick in. It's only when they
Right.
take on, right?
It would be, think of the word like a sheet. It would a sheet to another authority.
Yeah.
Higher authority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The only thing I saw is on line 3 of section 2B3, there's like an extra comma and
There
space.
is, I did correct that. Yes,
Okay,
thank
good,
you.
okay,
And
sorry.
there are 1 or 2 spacing issues that we'll
Yep,
clean up.
no
before-
worries.
Yes.
Okay, with that, any public comment?
Hi, Kathy Hanville, Lower Makefield resident. I really appreciate you keeping this at the end of agenda again. Maybe the third time, you can move it up a little.
It's only June.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're doing it. I wish, it would have been nice if could have gotten it all signed and delivered in Pride Month, but hey, you're doing it, we're moving along. I just wanted to point out, because I gave you a big lecture last time, but just to point out, I don't know if any of you saw, the Southern Poverty Law Center issued their report on hate in 2023 today. We talked, last time I talked to you about conversion therapy. 2 of those groups were added to their hate list. And as I was waiting, I was perusing some of it. Pennsylvania was number 3 after California and New York as far as hate groups in the state. So yes, and might be the highest for anti-government groups. I didn't totally delve into that. So I just wanted to reiterate how important this is. I think you get that, so I don't need to expound on it further. But, just myself today, I had my special shirt on for you. And I went to Walmart in Levittown because I had to get something printed, and I was just very nervous. I was very nervous wearing the shirt there. And I just had a thought about, like, okay, if something happened in LMT, I would trust this police department to deal with me in a respectful manner. I'm not so sure about Levittown. Nothing against Levittown. The Walmart was a little scary to me, honestly. Anyway, thank you for doing this, and I'll be back when you have it on again.
Thank you.
Zachary Rubin, 1661 Covington Road. I know this motion is only to advertise, but I'd like to speak in support of it prematurely, I guess. This township has been in the vanguard for progressive things over the years. We're one of the first to pass a low-density construction ordinance. We did the LED equivalents for public buildings. We did a native plant ordinance. We did a bamboo ordinance. We have a playground for people with special needs. So I think this is just another feather in our cap to show that we are out front in certainly very good movements.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about just process, a brief question? In terms of Ms. Hand brought up a good point, good point about the timing. If we could get it signed, sealed, delivered during Pride Month, that would be ideal, obviously. We have another meeting, our next meeting is June 19th or
Correct.
Juneteenth.
Mhm.
Is this something, given where we're at today, if it is advertised, that we could potentially get through then?
It should be. We will be at the sort of beck and call of the publications of the Courier Times at the point in time when they'll accept this for advertisement. It only has to be advertised once. We will make sure it's there in time. Hopefully, they'll be able to do so. That's our goal also, to have it before you.
Okay.
Next meeting on the 19th.
Thank you.
And Dan, when I was doing that math and I realized that we have a meeting on Juneteenth, I was like, whoa. And I acknowledge that it's, not a county or state holiday, as I understand it yet, but it does feel a little awkward.
I've said the same exact thing.
Well,
Yeah.
so really do want to get it done, but does, I don't know. So if we can get it done, that's great, but it feels weird on that particular day to be taking such a step forward as we seem to be taking a step back on the day we enact it.
I mean, you could look at rescheduling there's nothing that would prohibit you from rescheduling a second meeting in June. If, again, that would be dependent on your schedules. But, a special meeting in June, 24-hour notice is all you need for advertising purposes.
I know we've been talking, and I hate to pair this with all this important conversation, but we've been talking about the cost of meetings, the cost of videos, the cost of live streaming and all that. So I don't know. I would say we should be mindful next year, and obviously next year won't be a Wednesday, I don't think. Sometimes that happens 2 years in a row, but it's not a leap year.
No
So
leap years.
anyway, so I'm not, whatever the board decides, I support.
With that, I'll call the question for the motion. All those in favor of advertising the anti-discrimination ordinance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? The motion passes 4-0. Are there other general updates?
There are, and I'll try to be quick given the lateness of the evening. We did attend at your request, at the board's request, a zoning hearing board meeting to participate, not oppose, but just participate in a hearing for 10 Ivy Lane. That was last evening. Supervisor Grenier and I attended. Unfortunately, the applicant did not appear or attend. So we will be at the zoning hearing board meeting, or at least I will be at the zoning hearing board meeting on the 18th. Hopefully, the applicant will appear. Yeah. I just want to note that we are working on a number of ordinances, including the short-term rental ordinance, the zoning ordinance, sign ordinance regulating the demolition of historic structures, and the responsible contractor ordinance. Most of them are really in good shape and should be before you very shortly, so you have that to look forward to reviewing all of those. And then I'd just like to circle back on the open space referendum. If you would like us to proceed, it sounds like you would like us to proceed, we will do that. Hopefully we can have something before you next meeting on the 19th.
Excellent.
Okay, that concludes my report.
Supervisor reports. Supervisor Grenier.
Oh, sure. A couple things. I know it says ad hoc property committee. I'll say the Patterson Farm Master Plan Advisory Committee, in addition to the items put forth by our township manager in his report, there's been a lot of discussion about nonprofits and different entities to speak to. I provided a bunch, sort of groups of nonprofits, organizations across the state and across the country that I provided the committee, and there's subcommittees for many, several different subcommittees now, but one of them is the nonprofit subcommittee, so they're moving forward with that. Ron Schmidt has been very helpful with his nonprofit work as well. They will be meeting, of course, next week. The other one I have, sorry, as I get away from my microphone, farmland. Thank you to both, Derek's still back there, to our Public Works Director and our Planning Director. Farmland had reached out. I recommend they reach out to them, to those folks, because they wanted to have an additional road opening, or widen a road opening at one of their farms, Leadham Farm, which would have required a state highway occupancy permit. There's a culvert there, et cetera, so some engineering. So I believe our folks worked with them to give them some other options that did not require all that, including some turnaround in the farm. And they did have to get a permit, but I believe that was issued. So thank you to our staff for that one. And also, the zoning hearing board, as our solicitor just mentioned, no items were covered last night because folks didn't show up, but there was a discussion about the updated notification ordinance, which I think we'll be seeing fairly soon. I know they had their solicitor email our township manager with some recommendations, which were 100% in line with everything we've already spoken about, so I don't think there'll be any conflict there. That's the short version. Our June 18th meeting, it looks like there will be approximately 5 items up for discussion, ranging from your typical to a few that we may have. I think we may actually oppose one of them, but that's for later. And that is my supervisor reports. Thank you.
Supervisor Ross?
No report.
Supervisor Blendy?
You pretty much heard it throughout the course of the meeting, so we're good.
Excellent. Any other business?
Yeah, actually Supervisor Blendy alluded to a little bit too, but if it's possible for the potentially the next agenda, next meeting, as many of us probably received letters in the mail from Aqua saying that they're proposing a rate increase of roughly 30%, I think, and my numbers may be off, so don't quote me on that.
31.
30, there you go. And so they're proposing that to the PUC. There is a process where individuals and potentially townships could write letters and become part of the process. There's one date, the only date I saw, and it's going to be a long process from what I understood. The only date I saw in there, and I don't know that it's one necessarily that we have to pay attention to, but we should recognize it, is July 22nd for one of their procedural items. So if there's an opportunity to have a discussion about that before that July 22nd date, just in case, I appreciate that.
Excellent. Any other business? Okay, not seeing any appointments or reappointments to boards or commissions. If you have any additional public comment on non-agenda items, I'm not seeing any light, but we'll have, but you're welcome. Yeah.
No, I apologize, it's late. I know you all look very tired, so I'll make this brief. I would like to discuss the current condition of our backyard. Larissa Luzecki, 18 Maple Vale Drive. My backyard at 18 Maple Vale and April's yard on 20 Maple Vale. As you all recall, last year, July, storm drain in between our yards collapsed, taking with it a substantial amount of our yards. The yard was constructed and rebuilt. Unfortunately, the material used for the topsoil is mostly made up of sand silt and clay. We noticed a problem with the soil almost immediately. The water, it just doesn't drain. We get a little bit of rainfall, it just sits on the surface. I did talk to Derek about it. He said, let the grass come in, let the ground settle, and give it a couple of seasons, which is completely reasonable. We did do that. We unfortunately had a very rough, rainy fall, winter. We had snow and rain. The conditions did not get better. We're concerned that it's not a sustainable surface for us. There's grass growing now. We're not even worried about the grass. It would be nice if we could walk across the lawn at any point during the year, but we cannot, unfortunately. When there is any kind of precipitation, the water just collects, sits on the surface. Animals run through, creating divots. We're just concerned that it's just over time going to get worse. We realize the magnitude, and it's not lost on us, the construction that it took to rebuild the yard. But there's construction and then there's restoration, and I think that's where this is lacking. We appreciate everything that's been done, but I think there's a little bit more that needs to be done, just to get us to that point that we get our yards back. April's experiencing the same issue, and again, we're concerned it's not going to get any better. I have talked to many people. I sent a soil sample out to Penn State, and they came back with the analysis that Derek was good enough to share with us about the content. What was interesting about that report is at the bottom it stated that it was in line with the specifications set by NJDOT, which is New Jersey Department of Transportation. What's concerning to me is I don't live in New Jersey and I don't live on a construction site. Again, I know it has to do with how it had to all be rebuilt, but was our yard and its personal property taken into consideration with the restoration of the properties? And I'm hoping that we can open a discussion of what else we can do to kind of get us to that next level, because we're not there yet, unfortunately.
What I would say is, we're aware of your concerns. If potentially we could talk about this and look at it after the meeting and set up a time thereafter.
Yeah, there may be, and not to volunteer any of you, but there may be benefit of you going
Yep,
out and
yeah.
seeing it.
No problem.
For yourself.
Yeah, we've been,
Um,
I mean, yeah. That's not a problem. We could definitely schedule a time to come out and take a look at that. It wouldn't be a problem.
We would appreciate that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you,
Mhm.
thank you, thank you.
April Village, Clower, 20 Mapleville Drive. I'm actually making a statement because Jackson wanted to make one tonight, too. We do so appreciate everything you've done. We're so excited about, I use the word excited loosely because I don't want to get my hopes up, but with everything with Congressman Fitzpatrick's office and the support we've had, we can't thank you enough for what's going to do the community. The challenge we have, as Larissa pointed out, and we appreciate the offer to come out, Jackson can't go in the backyard without shoes on. He can't have friends over playing in the yard and run out without shoes on. There's still marks from the construction vehicles. There's hard ground back there, and it's not the easement, it's in the yard. So if you could, please come take a look at it for us. We would appreciate that. Derek's aware of the concern that we had with the swale that was put in that kind of brings more water towards the house now. But if that's something you could look at as well, we'd really appreciate it. And again, not to lose anything, we are so appreciative of all the work that's been done. It's not that. We just, we don't want to look out the window anymore and keep having that feeling that it's never going to go away. And we just want it to be back to as normal as we can have it. So thank you.
You guys around this weekend?
We are.
Give me a call.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Okay,
everyone.
thanks. Not seeing any additional comment at this time, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks.
Good night.